All right. Hi, I'm Mary Todd. I'm an MS GIST candidate here at the University of Arizona. I work in cultural resource management, work for SRI here in Tucson, Arizona as part of their GIS team. Today, I'm going to be presenting least cost path analysis of the Awesome Oriole Song Series Journey. I do want to preface this by saying that there are a lot of awesome words in this presentation that I've never heard spoken, so I might mispronounce some things, and I apologize for that ahead of time. So the study of trails in North America and North American Southwest archaeology is relatively new, but the region does provide an excellent study area due to the desert pavement. You can actually still see some of these trails that have been preserved in the desert. Archaeologists typically record sites as discrete. However, trail system analyses provides a better understanding of connections between the sites and can answer questions of how and why people moved from one place to another within the landscape. Trails create connections as well as boundaries. So a little bit of background, we're going to go through these kind of fast since it's just a 15-minute presentation. Sonoran pre-contact archaeology. I did include the pre-Clovis site that is in White Sands. I know it's not in the Sonoran Desert, it's in the Chihuahua Desert, but it's a pretty cool site, so I put it in there anyway with the footprints that go back to about 23 to 21,000 years ago. It's the oldest unequivocal evidence of human presence in all of the Americas. Then we've got the Clovis tradition. That's starts about 13,000 and a half years ago. Typically, you'll see large fluted projectile points. People are hunting megafauna, mammoths, stuff like that. Here in Arizona, in the San Pedro River Valley, you've got some of the oldest sites in North America, especially down by the border with Mexico and NACO. And then on the Tohono O'odham Nation land, there's Vatana Cave near Santa Rosa. That dates back to about 10,000 to 9,000 years ago. The next phase is Archaic. Early Archaic is when the widespread adoption of seeds and grains starts. You see a lot less megafauna hunting because those animals are going extinct and people are using more plant food. During the late Archaic, which goes up to about 1,500 years ago, corn becomes a staple here in the Southwest. I think it came up from Mexico, if I remember correctly. And then they believe that corn made it up to the Sonoran Desert and it actually spread out from the Sonoran Desert to the rest of the Southwest. Okay, so next we've got the Hohokam cultural tradition. Those folks were around 1,500 years ago to 600 years ago. They are the characteristics of their presence in the archaeological record includes the red buff pottery, as you can see in this slide right up here, marine shell jewelry, carved stone bowls, palettes. The classic period started around 800 years ago. That's when you start to see drastic changes in the architecture and pottery. And then the current O'odham people are largely regarded as contemporary descendants of the Hohokam. A little bit to the west around the California-Arizona border in Southern California, Western Arizona, we've got the Patayan tradition. They have a buff-colored ceramic technology and a rich tradition of petroglyphs. I've got a photo of some petroglyphs from the Sears Point site here in Arizona. And then the earliest human tribes are descendants of the Patayan culture. So let's get to the folks that were here during European contact. So right, I guess around the year 1450, we've got the various O'odham tribes, used to be called Pima, Maricopa, Papago, and they they had a salt pilgrimage that they would do every year. It was exclusively male endeavor, and during their journey, the men would have to obey certain rituals, typically once a year. I did find one source that say they would go twice a year, so they would wait for the high tides to deposit salt down by the Gulf of Mexico, and then they would go retrieve that salt. And they would run from the Gila River down to the Gulf of Mexico. And if you do a little bit of math, it probably took them about 14 days round trip, which is pretty fast. Let's see. So why were they doing the salt pilgrimage? Well, obviously to go get salt, you need salt in the desert. You can preserve food with it. Helps you with electrolytes, but also it was a pilgrimage for young men, like a coming of age pilgrimage. It helped them establish sort of their position in the community. Men that did well would come back with certain powers, and they could be considered extra good at things like hunting, sports, dancing, and if you're really lucky, you could find a wife when you got back. In 2015, the Tohono O'odham revitalized this pilgrimage. They left from Sells, Arizona, and went down to the Gulf Coast. I believe they did it in 2016. They might have skipped during COVID. I'm not sure if they've picked it back up again, but that's something that they're trying to revitalize for future generations. Okay, so what is my analysis? I'm going to be exploring the hypothetical routes utilized by the Akimel and the Peeposh people and their ancestors on this salt pilgrimage by creating least cost paths of the geographic locations described in the Westward Journey of the Oriole Song series. So if you take a look at this map, the Akimel, O'odham, and Peeposh live right up here in the Gila River Indian community. This is the Tohono O'odham Nation down here in the yellow. And then right here, we've got the coast. This is the part of the coast where people were collecting salt. What is the Oriole Song series? It's a traditional song that would be sang at dances, stop dances in particular. And people would, it was recorded in the 1980s by anthropologist Donald Barr. He recorded Mr. Vincent Joseph, who's a Gila River Indian community member, singing the song and speaking it plainly in his native language. So Barr translated it to English. When he translated it, he divided the song into the 47 songs into 8 separate sections. And then this analysis is going to be based on the second section. It's called the Westward Journey, and it includes song 9 through 22. So what are the methods? A least cost path. It's not a very complicated analysis. Here's a graph to show you sort of how it works. So as it's applied to the archaeology of trails, there's a principle of least efforts, which essentially says that humans will try to follow the path that requires the least amount of effort. When you enter all this into a raster data set, each cell represents a cost, and then you can go from point A to point B by taking the least cost sum of the cells, which will get you from point A to point B with the least amount of effort. That assumes that the humans have the complete knowledge of the landscape they're working in, and they are acting as fully rational beings when they decide how to travel. So there's a lot of assumptions in least cost when you apply it to human decision making. Elevation and slope are 2 frequently used cost values assigned to an LCP analysis. So I ended up including Tobler's hiking function in my analysis. When you use the path distance or distance accumulation tool, there's an option for you to have a vertical factor that you can plug in as a table. Tobler created an exponential function where you can multiply the slope by a vertical factor to come up with a cost based on how challenging it would be to navigate the landscape, an anisotropic landscape, or a landscape that's not flat. This graph right here shows you what he did. So at around, if you're walking down slope just slightly, that's going to be fastest for you. As you start to increase your slope, you're going to slow down, or as you start to move down slope at a more what's the word I'm looking for? At a steeper slope, then you're going to decrease as well until eventually it would get, you know, so slopey that you would fall down. Okay, so Darling and Elsett wrote an article in 2009, and they've defined 3 trail types. And these are their descriptions. Type 1, settlement to settlement. Type 2, settlement to resource. Type 3, settlement to social ceremonial location. So this is what they came up with. I added the signatures in type 4. Type 4, social ceremonial to social ceremonial location. The signatures of each are right here on the right. So my study area includes the Phoenix Basin all the way down to the Gulf of California and Mexico, and then part of the, this is the upper Gila River in western Arizona. As you can see up here, the Northeast has a lot of locations, so we'll zoom into that in just a second, but that one has probably the most going on. So segments, let's see, I divided everything up into segments. So point 1 to point 2 is segment 1, point 2 to point 3 is segment 2, point 3 to point 4 is segment 3, and so on. Okay, Northeast sub area, segment 1. So in the song, they start in Blackwater. Blackwater is still a village today on the Gila River Indian community. And they go to the Santan Mountains, or Zigzag Connected as it's called in the song. We'll see an example of the song in just a minute. And then segment 2 is the Santan Mountains to Superstition Mountains, Superstition to Iron Mountain, Iron to Gila Butte to South Mountain, and South to Comac, in just west of the base of the Sierra Estrellas, or also known as Broad Mountain in the songs. Okay, here's an example of the song. This is segment 3, Superstition Peak to Iron Mountain. So he's singing about remainder bent. Oriole bird leads me there and I enter. So these songs are supposed to be from an Oriole person's point of view, or sometimes the Oriole person can take a dreamer with them on their journey. This is a photo of the hieroglyphic trail in Superstition Mountains, which is misnamed because those were petroglyphs, not hieroglyphs. But I put this picture here because he talks about a shining rainbow, and it's kind of, you can see if you were approaching that area in the rain, then there could be a rainbow there. Okay, my workflow. I entered my DEMs into the path distance tool. This is also where you enter in that table I showed you for the vertical factor. That will pop out your path distance. And then the least cost paths, or the cost path is polyline. You can enter in the backlink that was created with that tool, and also your DEM for that study area. and the destination of where you're going, and the line, the least cost path will show up. Here's an example of kind of what it looks like. This is the least cost path from Blackwater to Santan, and the colored is the path distance. So the further away you get from your source, the more red the color. All right, so what were the results of this analysis? Segment 1 through 6 is in the the northeast sub area. That's the area up by the confluence of the Salt and Gila rivers. So you can see right here, we're starting in Blackwater, moving to Santan, Superstition, Iron Mountain. What I want to point out is segment 1. So segment 1, I did find on an old GLO map from 1876. The surveyor recorded a road that went from Blackwater to Sacaton Village, which would be right around here. And then an archaeologist in the past recorded trails going through the Santans up here. There were also defensive lookout sites on top of the ridges up here. The least cost path did not match up very well to what believe the actual documented trails. It does kind of fit in right here with the GLO trail, but then it merges off and cuts through into the mountains, where in reality, we believe that they would stop through Sacaton first and then headed into the Santans. Unfortunately, the Phoenix area is very, very developed. And so there hasn't been, to my knowledge, I couldn't find anything, evidence of trails or linear ceramic distributions that indicate trail. You know, any evidence like that has probably been destroyed. So segment 1 from Blackwater to Santan is not the most expedient, and it meets the criteria such as the presence of lookouts and other archaeological features on the ridges of mountains. So I categorized it as a type 3 and type 4 trail. Those are the trails that are settlement to social ceremonial and social ceremonial to social ceremonial. Segments 2 through 5, unfortunately, I couldn't do anything with those because I couldn't find any data to compare them to. So determining the trail types was not possible. Segment 6, go back to segment 6 real quick. Segment 6 right here is from South Mountain to Comatic. The least cost path created a route in the valley through the South Mountains towards the eastern base of Sierra Estrella. We know that there was a trail there because Kino used it when he walked through in 1699, I believe. I think that this is pretty good evidence that this trail, that the Comatic Trail, probably, here it is right here, probably extends east into that valley and connects. There are petroglyphs in here. There are rock cairns that are used to identify the trails. You're not going to see any things on the maps. You'll just have to take my word for it. It's culturally sensitive information. We can't show the locations, but it's there. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, the northwest sub area. So that's going to go from Comatic, or the eastern side of the Sierra Estrellas, to Agua Caliente. The Comatic Trail has been well documented. It's probably the most well documented trail in my study area. And it really only matches, the least cost path only matches the trail going through the mountain pass. That's one reason I didn't put my point in the mountain pass, but off to the side, because I wanted to see if the least cost path would actually go through the same pass as the documented trail, and it did. But then it verges off, goes up through here, and there's no evidence of any trails cutting through this area. So what does that mean? The results indicate that the actual route was not the most expedient. And I think you can think of, so this is the Rainbow Valley right here. You can think of this trail as sort of a super highway through the area. It would have been used for all of the activities like walking from settlement to settlement, walking from your settlement to resources. And then it's also in song. So it's also a type 4 trail, social ceremonial to social ceremonial. All right, I combined the results of the southwest and southeast sub areas. So the southwest sub area extended from Agua Caliente to the Salt Flats. This least cost path took us sort of west of where the actual documented trails are. You can see all these light gray lines on my map. Those are documented trails that I georeferenced from various ethnographic resources. And as you can see, there's a lot of them and it gets pretty complicated. So it doesn't follow the most expedient route, meaning that people were probably stopping at other villages on the way, at sacred sites on the way down there. So I categorize it as type 2, 3, and 4 trails. It wouldn't have been the kind of trail that you took just to walk to your neighbors because it wasn't the most expedient. You would have taken that trail to stop at sacred sites along the way. Segment 9 is from the Salt Flats going back up to Blackwater. So this will complete our journey. And the journey in the song series, should have mentioned this earlier, the journey in the song series is a counterclockwise east to west, which you'll see that in a lot of Otham mythologies. It represents the sun rising and setting. And Vincent Joseph did not sing about this segment. The reasons, we're not really sure. We think that maybe because he was singing about the underworld, he didn't think it was appropriate to sing in the presence of Donald Barr. It's possible he forgot, but I don't think that that's likely because he remembered the other 47 songs. So it might have been out of context for him to sing about the underworld while he was being recorded. Okay, conclusions and future work. So was there anything really surprising from my analysis? Not really. I kind of expected the least cost path to not match up with the actual trails. It suggests that the westward journey is a mix of physical trails representing all modes of travel and conceptual trails that connect sacred places. It's not surprising, given the Otham worldview, that the sacred and physical worlds are intertwined. I would like to do in the future, and I think would be really cool, that I was going to do, but I ran out of time, is a viewshed analysis of all the mountains that are mentioned in the westward journey. I think if you did that and then find out where in the landscape you can maybe see all of the mountain peaks. Is there a trail anywhere near there? That would be cool. Is there a site anywhere near there? You could incorporate more Otham songs into this, do another least cost path with songs and compare those results to these results. And something that I wish I had done, but I thought about it too late, was to modify Toller's away tables instead of a hiking speed, to modify it to the average male ultra marathon speeds. So I could come up with, I could make like a contour lines of running pace to determine how long it would have taken you to run from between the locations. And then there's more data out there. Cultural resource firms have more data that it's not accessible to the public. You'd have to email somebody that works there and get that data. So incorporating that into this analysis or another one like it could be done. Overall, I think that yeah, the results were as expected. The most, I guess, significant thing would be maybe that extension of the Comatic Trail eastward into South Mountain, that we could say that, you know, we have evidence that it likely probably did extend eastward.